Thanks.
Roll it.
Oh,
Okay.
we're good.
Good afternoon. My name is Andy Taylor. I'm a redistricting lawyer. I specialize in election law and have been doing so in the state of Texas for the last 34 years. I'm joined by my partner, Joe Slovacek, who is a noted redistricting lawyer and expert in these issues. And we are announcing the filing of a major legal challenge today against the Harris County Commissioners Court because of the redistricting plan they passed just a few short weeks ago in late October. That plan has been dubbed the Ellis 3 plan, and that's how I will refer to that plan in my remarks. So this afternoon we filed a state court lawsuit here in Harris County. The basis of that lawsuit is the Texas constitutional right to vote. As we all know, our forefathers died on the battlefield in order to give us this valuable democratic right to be heard in our government. And we are not going to stand idly by and allow those lives that were lost to be ignored because of some political desire to shift the balance of the Harris County Commissioners Court from 3-2 to 4-1. That's not a worthy trade for the right to vote. Now, because I'm a redistricting lawyer, I want to explain to you why it is that we redistrict in the first place. So as we all know, every 10 years, there's a new census. And because population shifts and moves around, districts such as these precincts that are in Harris County for Commissioners Court are going to, some are going to add population and others are going to lose population. Well, there's a constitutional mandate, and it's known as one person, one vote. The United States Supreme Court said that we want to have roughly equal population for all representative geographies so that everyone has the same strength behind their right to vote and their right to be represented. So here's the issue. Every 10 years, when the population changes, equal population no longer occurs because people move back and forth amongst precinct districts. And so what the law requires under the doctrine of one person, one vote is that we look at the precinct with the greatest amount of overpopulation and we compare it to the precinct with the least amount of population. And when you run the math, you have to make sure that those goalposts between the biggest and the smallest is no greater than 10%. That's the deviation that the U.S. Supreme Court has said we must live by. Well, under the 2020 census, Harris County grew substantially. We have now 4,731,145 people. And when you divide that by 4, the ideal population size for precincts 1, 2, 3, and 4 would be 1,182,786 people. So the question becomes, if you have to redistrict, what do you need to do to get back into compliance with the constitutional mandate of one person, one vote? Well, when the 2020 census numbers came out, we learned that the biggest district as compared to the smallest district had a change of 17.71%. That's not inside the 10% that the law requires. So the Harris County Commissioners Court had to redistrict. They had no legal choice. But we remember the adage of don't let a good crisis go to waste. The Democrats on the Commissioners Court saw an opportunity not to simply and roughly have all of the districts be the same size, but to use this mandate to redistrict as a mandate to run up the political score because they want to go from a 3-2 to a 4-1 Democratic majority on the court. Why? It's really simple. There's only one super majority requirement for the commissioners where you have to have 4 people show up for a meeting to have a quorum. That's when you want to raise taxes. If you want to have a tax hike, you've got to have 4 people in the seat. And that's why they want to do this, is so that they can raise taxes. If you don't have 4 votes, then the 2 Republican commissioners could choose not to appear and therefore defeat a quorum, and therefore the people of Harris County will not be burdened with a tax hike that no one can afford. And so that's the political reason why they wanted to do this. Well, if all you have to do is move from 17.71% of a deviation between the biggest district and the smallest, and take it down to a difference of 10%, that math is 200,000 people. In other words, in order to redistrict this time, all the court needed to do was move 200,000 people. That's 4% of the population of Harris County. That's not what happened. Instead, they moved 2.28 million Harris County residents. That is 48% of the entire county. So you have to ask yourself, what's going on here? If the constitutional solution is to move 200,000 people, and instead we move 2.28 million people, what in the heck is going on? And we look deeper, and what I'm about to tell you is the reason why we decided, you know what, we're not going to stand by and let this happen. We're not going to be silent. We're going to file a lawsuit, and it's for this reason. We know under the Texas Constitution, voters are afforded and guaranteed a right to vote. The way we're set up under the Texas Constitution is every 2 years, 2 of the 4 commissioners are up for re-election or election in the first instance. This was something that the framers created. It's been in place since 1954 because we changed in that year from a 2-year commissioner term to a 4-year commissioner term. And the framers felt that, you know what, if we have everybody elected at the exact same time, we lose some continuity. We want to have experience on the commissioners' court. So we're going to stagger the elections. So all the commissioners were up for election in 1954. That's what the Constitution of Texas required. But then those who had a certain number precinct that they were represented would only get 2 years. And the others would be lucky enough to have a 4-year full term. And by doing that, all future elections would be staggered as they are today. So what does that mean? Because we have staggered elections, the voters who reside in precincts 2 and 4, the even precincts, have a Texas guaranteed right to vote under that Constitution in November of next year. So we're going to have primaries in the spring, and we're going to have the general in the fall. And every Harris County registered voter has the right to vote in those elections in 2022 if you're from precincts 2 and 4. Conversely, if you're in precincts 1 and 3, you have to wait. You can't vote next November. You vote in November of 2024 because that's the way the framers of the Texas Constitution set it up. And there's no way that we can change that. That's just simply the rules of the political game. So now let me tell you what happened. Instead of just moving 200,000 people equalizing the populations, disrupting the lives of innocent Harris County voters as minimally as possible. No. The three Democrats on the court, they said, we're going to run up the score, we're going to get political payback, and we are going to make sure that, for example, the district that is currently held by Commissioner Jack Cagle, we're going to take that Republican district and we're going to turbo-size it Democrat because we want to get rid of him. Total political intentions behind this plan. So instead of doing what was right and just moving 200,000 people, I already told you they moved 2.28 million, and of that group, 1.1 million people lost their right to vote. Why? Because the plan drawers intentionally moved voters from the even precincts who had a right to vote next November to odd precincts. And they did it on purpose. And they knew exactly what they were doing because they were trying to accomplish their political goals. And we're here to tell you that we are not going to allow the three Democrats on the Commissioner's Court to steal away over 1.1 million people's right to vote without us challenging it. And I want to introduce to you who is challenging this illegal plan. First, I want to introduce you to a young lady. Her name is Rania Kanoyan. Rania Kanoyan. That's spelled Khanoyan. Kanoyan. Now, Rania, I remember these days in my far-off memory. She's only 18 years old, and because she's 18, she got to enjoy for the very first time this month her Texas guaranteed constitutional right to vote. And she will tell you that she's very excited to be civically minded and involved. She's been working with election clerks. She's been doing her civic duty. She's in ROTC. She's going to school. She has a job. She stands for what we're trying to uphold here, and that is a good, decent, hardworking minority young woman who wants to just simply exercise her right to vote. She, under the original plan, before it was stolen from her a couple of weeks ago, she was in Precinct 4. So because Rania lived in Precinct 4, she was looking forward to and was constitutionally entitled to a right to vote this coming spring and the fall of 2022. But because of these redistricting movements that the Democrats inflicted upon her, they moved her. So she's no longer in Precinct 4. She's in Precinct 3. And so that court told Rania and the 1.1 million people she represents that your right to vote is not as important as our right to try to have more Democrats on the Commissioner's Court. She told me that there are 3 reasons why she's here. Number 1, she wants to stand and be accountable for the protection, not only of her own right, but of the right to vote of Harris County residents. Number 2, she's angry that some politician would steal away her constitutionally protected right to vote. And number 3, the reason why she's a plaintiff in this case is she's going to look the judge in the eye and say, can I have my right to vote back? She's going to ask that her constitutional right to vote be restored. We have other plaintiffs who are standing side by side. Rania, I want to introduce you to Alan Vera and David Lugo. You know, the right to vote doesn't depend upon the color of your skin. It doesn't depend upon your gender. All it depends upon is that you're 18 or older and you're registered to vote and you're a citizen. And if you possess those qualifications, then the Texas Constitution not only protects, but mandates your right to vote. And these fine gentlemen are here to support Rania to say that this isn't about Republican, Democrat, or anything else. This is something unanimously everyone can coalesce behind, and that's the right to vote under our Texas Constitution. I also have two distinguished public officials who I'm proud to represent in this litigation. The first is Commissioner Tom Ramsey. As you know, he is the incumbent from Precinct 3, and Commissioner Jack Cagle, who is the incumbent from Commissioner's Precinct number 4. Now, I alluded to this earlier. The politics of what the Ellis 3 plan did was to turbo-size the Republican numbers in Commissioner Ramsey's precinct, meaning that there are a significant amount of more Republicans in his district, making it more likely that he would be reelected. But the converse is true with Commissioner Cagle. They took what was a strong Republican district and flipped it to become a Democratic district because they want to get rid of them so they can raise taxes. Well, I want to say something about the right to vote. The right to vote doesn't think about who it helps or who it hurts. The right to vote is for all of us. And I'm very proud that these two commissioners have put their money and their lives on the line to join this lawsuit. They could have stayed in the shadows. They didn't have to stand up here like these other plaintiffs who are putting their names and reputations on the line, but they did. And if you have any question in your mind about, well, maybe this is all politics that's driving this, and that's why they're here, I want to share something about the way the redistricting works for Commissioner Ramsey in particular. If we attack and win in court, and this Ellis 3 plan goes down in flames as it should, guess what? His turbo Republican, easy to get reelected district is going to become way more Democrat. And that ought to tell you something about where he's coming from. He's not in it to win reelection. He's in it to stand for the right to vote, just as Commissioner Cagle is, and for that I'm quite proud. So I want to sum all of this up and then open it up for questions, but I want to repeat just a couple of statistics so that you understand what we're saying. We filed suit today. It's a state court case, not a federal court case. It's based on state law, which is the Texas Constitution, not any federal statute like the Voting Rights Act or the federal Constitution. This is 100% state, and it will wind up in front of the Texas Supreme Court ultimately, and they will be the final arbiters of this case and this claim. The reason why we sued is because the Harris County Commissioners Court could have made sure that the obligation to redistrict on the one hand and the solemn obligation to protect the right to vote on the other hand peacefully coexist. Instead, they used the obligation of redistricting in a way as a spear through the heart of the constitutional right to vote. That Ellis 3 plan doesn't cause those two competing principles to peacefully coexist. They took one principle and destroyed the other. And that's not going to be tolerated by us or hopefully by the residents of Harris County who have had this harm inflicted upon them. And we certainly hope that the court will see it the same way. I personally, because of my redistricting experience, wanted to see if it was possible to do something. I asked, can we redistrict and move the 200,000 people that have to be moved in such a way that not a single Harris County resident who has a right to vote next year doesn't lose that right to vote. Stated in another way, if people live in precincts 2 and 4, the even precincts, can we redistrict and fix the 200,000 population problem and not move a single person from 2 and 4 into 1 and 3? Because when you go from even to odd, that's when the constitutional crisis occurs. And the answer is absolutely yes. We are going to be able to demonstrate with a map to this judge that it is possible and in fact obligatory that you make sure if you're going to redistrict, you don't strip the right to vote from one single Harris County registered voter. And we're going to submit a plan that does just that. I'd like to conclude before asking for any questions that you might have. I want to say something very specific to Lina Hidalgo, the county judge. I want to say something specific to Rodney Ellis, the Precinct 1 commissioner who came up with this abomination. And I want to say something to Adrian Garcia, who's in Precinct 2, that's a beneficiary. How sad is this? A minority that's going to benefit politically at the expense of 1.1 million of Harris County folks losing their right to vote. I want to say something to all three of them. Lina, Rodney, and Adrian, shame on you. Shame on you. The right to vote is more important than you. And this lawsuit's going to demonstrate that. And when the dust settles, be careful what you ask for, because when you're up for re-election, it's not just this crowd that's going to remember what you did. It's 4.7 million people in Harris County, and we're coming for you politically. Watch out.
Is there an injunction that you're looking for?
We are going to seek injunctive relief. The way it works procedurally is we need to convince a court that the LS3 plan is unconstitutional. Once a court makes that determination, then that plan is on ice. It's put in suspended animation, and it's as if it never occurred. And then the court can either come up with its own plan, or the court can accept our plan, because our plan makes sure nobody loses the right to vote.
So what's the timeline you're seeking?
We're going to move like a rocket. Redistricting is one of those areas of the law that moves very, very rapidly. I'll give you an example. I have been the lead counsel for the state of Texas in congressional redistricting, state senate redistricting, state House of Representatives redistricting, State Board of Education redistricting, and the Legislative Redistricting Board redistricting. And I was involved back when Bush became president, the 2000 cycle, all the way into the next decade. So I've handled about 100 cases in this arena. These cases move very rapidly, and the reason for it is you've got two things going on: the need for speed. The first reason is we've got people's constitutional rights at stake. And the second reason is we've got an election coming up in just a few short months. And so if we don't get this figured out rapidly, then we're going to have people lose their right to vote. And that's something the courts recognize as an emergency. So we're going to move fast.
Question about, I guess, the argument. So you're talking about how taking away somebody's right to vote. I'm not an expert on the law, but isn't it your right to vote based on the district you live in? So if you no longer live in the district, and I understand what you were explaining before, but does the Constitution say you have a right to vote for a county commissioner every 4 years?
It does. So
Every 4 years, or?
it does. So everybody has a right to vote. Every county commissioner has an obligation to be before the voters every 4 years. The staggered election part of the Constitution requires that in, for example, 2022, the commissioners that are up are going to be from precincts 2 and 4. So Mr. Cagle behind me and Mr. Garcia. And then in 2024, Mr. Ramsey and Mr. Ellis will be up for their election. So it's every couple of years. Here's the thing to remember when you framed your question about, well, don't you just have to wait a little while? I'm not willing to look Rania in the face, who just turned 18, and say, you know, sweetie, you're going to have to wait until 2024 to exercise your right to vote. I'm not ever going to say that to her. And that's what we're saying to the Commissioner's Court, individuals who supported this plan. That's what we're going to say to the judge. And that's what we're saying to anyone else who will listen. And that is, the right to vote is sacred, it's inviolate, and a right that's delayed is no better than a right that is denied.
Does either commissioner want to add anything that you had to say? I know Commissioner Cagle, you've been around a while. So, if you had anything to add just about how this is going to affect you and voters in your district.
1.1295 million people who are going to vote have to wait 6 years, unless they're Rania, who'll have to wait too. Rania, who'll have to wait too. 6 years to vote, while other residents in Harris County who just had an election have to have a redo. Over 1 million. This is not right. It's not appropriate. The right to vote is an invaluable right to each of us. As Andy said, our forefathers fought for it. Our foremothers and sisters fought for it. Our brothers, our sisters, our cousins, and our aunts fought for it. And we, not under the peril of arms, but we will fight to make sure that everyone who had a right to vote, or whose vote was taken away from them, we will make sure that they have that opportunity to be heard in our courts.
Just to highlight what the commissioner said, I want to explain something about Alan Vera, who's one of our plaintiffs. You know, Alan, he's sort of the converse of Rania. Alan is in a district originally under the benchmark plan that didn't get to vote until 2024. And he got moved into a district that gets to vote in 2022. So he gets an extra dose of constitutional enjoyment because he gets to vote earlier than he was supposed to. And yet, even though he likes that, he joined the lawsuit because he says, that's not fair. I shouldn't be able to jump ahead of the line in front of Rania. And that's why he's here. Any other questions? Well, thank you.
Your name at the beginning?
My name is Andy Taylor.
Mr. Taylor, just your title again.
So I am the lead lawyer for this great group of clients, and we not only represent ourselves, but the 4.7 million innocent Harris County people who had to suffer this abomination of the LS3 plan.
Would you call this a voting rights case, a civil rights case? How would you frame it? Election law?
It's, let me make it really simple. This is about the constitutional right to vote. Period, paragraph. And we want it back.
Let me just Thank you, Andy. I grew up in Crockett, Texas, and I can tell you that we've been taught from an early age the Texas Constitution matters. And as we looked at the Texas Constitution, we discovered that 46% of the county has been redistricted, and 1.1 million people's right to vote has been impacted. That's simply not right. Now, we could go into great discussion on how disruptive this is to people, how chaotic it is to people in terms of just their understanding and what they expect from county services. But it's important that we start with the most important thing, which is a person's right to vote. And I think when people look at this and they see the Texas Constitution and how it was violated, that I think we'll get agreement that, yes, in fact, this is way more disruptive than it needed to be.
Is there any precedent for commissioners suing the county commissioners court in Harris County?
There is. It's pretty typical. There's something called standing. So before you can actually break bread at the table, you got to be invited to have a seat at the table. And what the courts say is that you can't engage in a conversation with us about what's right and what's wrong unless and until you properly have a seat at this table. That's called standing. So standing can be seen in one of two ways in a case like this. One person who is uniquely affected in a manner that is distinct than anyone else is the elected official. Because these fine gentlemen are not here just on behalf of themselves. They're here on behalf of the people they represent, millions of people. And so they have standing, they have skin in the game, as you might understand that term, because they actually are the elected official. But we also have standing from the plaintiffs. So these are registered voters, they're minorities, and they deserve protection. And so we wanted to make sure that we had standing coming both ways. I can promise you this. If the commissioners had not joined this lawsuit, Harris County would be telling that judge, you shouldn't listen to them because the guys most affected weren't willing to stick their head out and be on this limb. So that's what they would have said. Now what they're going to say, because we did the right thing and they did the right thing, they're going to say, oh, this is ridiculous that we've got commissioners suing the commissioners court. How out of politic is that? That's all a head fake. What this is about is dismembering the Ellis III plan because it's unconstitutional. Plain and simple.
I was told that this doesn't happen very often, that commissioners sue the commissioners court. Do you know the last time it happened?
I couldn't give you a date, but I've been doing redistricting for 34 years, and it happens all the time.
Gabby, my name's Steve Reddick. I was county commissioner precinct 3 for 32 years. I just want to state this, that I was, after the 1990 census, the 2000 census, and the 2010 census, I was involved in those redistrictings. Never did Commissioner's Court, or those 3 times, even come close to this type of incredible gerrymandering and doing things in order to just basically politically put themselves superior to the other members of court. So I think it's imperative that people realize that you didn't see this on those 3 redistrictings where you didn't see the Democrats on Commissioner's Court, the Democrat or the Republicans complaining about it. As a matter of fact, you didn't see a bunch of citizens complaining about it because we try to do it fairly. But there's one other very major thing here. Thousands of family members of the employees of the commissioners now are concerned about keeping their jobs because the districts are changing so dramatically, going to cause a lot of inconvenience for people to be able to commute to work and what have you. People are scared to death. Right here at Thanksgiving and Christmas, all these families members are scared. And what they have done, the 3 Democrats have done, is shameful to put families of loyal county employees in jeopardy. Thank you.
All right, well, thank you for coming.
And Andy, is this a copy of it here?
It is. There's a copy of the lawsuit, and all of you are welcome to have it.
Can we use your Wi-Fi here to, can you tell me what the?
I don't have it memorized.
Thank you so much.
Oh, Holly, how are you? Good. Good to see you. It almost, you heard the majority.
It's a big game. C5 Slam Jam out there? Did you remind him they lost? I've never been the same. 1983. I never got over it.
Which is 4%.
Yeah,
So
right.
those numbers,
You're not old enough to remember that. 1983.
I was more than 75.
4%.
Okay, you were young. I wonder, if they violated the open record, open meeting.
were moved. You only need to move 200,000. And then 1,125,000 lost their right to vote. So some people are in that 6 year gap. But the interesting thing, the Constitution guarantees that they'll have elections staggered and counted. That's what they just totally disregarded. And I think it's couldn't help it, kind of deal, but